time will begin. Yeah.
Can you paste in the G's a cautious actor? For some reason I can't find it. Other than that, should be good. Yeah, and then nuclear war to say deal. And then on laws, then they said miscalculation. Okay. No, it's just saying like fucking like. They don't even warrant this out, right? It just says like anti-access and area denial systems. They have like a lot of reach over Taiwan. They don't like. I don't know how the card determines 18 to 0. Okay. Yeah, just paste it right at the top. Yeah, sure. Wait, where's the other reasons? Where's the reasons? Put the reasons in too. No, they're no, but they're saying that China is going to invade anyway. I want to contest that. Okay, cool. Alright, I'll just read the term then, if that's what you want. Alright. That was 1 minute and 36 seconds of prep time. So, it'll be sorry, excuse me. Alright, sorry, wait. We'll take 5 more seconds of prep time starting now. That's all. Okay, cool. I'll say this, right? Alright, so that was like 1 minute 50 of prep in total. So in that case, I'll just be going down their case. So in that case, time will start now. First, on their subpoint A about Nancy Pelosi, the Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan wasn't even a result of GPC. Smith 22 finds that the speaker is a fervent defender of Taiwan and a critic of China's human rights abuses, and so she went to Taiwan on her own terms. She's not representing these U.S. foreign policy decisions. This wasn't a result of GPC. Now, on to the Chinese invasion. First, Xi is a cautious actor. Rogan 20 explains that because Xi has already secured a significant part of his legacy and is set up for further international success in the status quo, without a 100% guarantee that invasion will be completely successful and that there will be minimal global backlash, Xi will never invade. Any warrant we win on how the invasion or the aftermath might go wrong is actually functioning as impact defense. Now, turn this entire argument, because the American strategy is reducing the risk of war. Savant 21 finds that threatens to destroy an adversary's infrastructure, while denial convinces an opponent that military objectives will not be achieved. Deterrence transfers higher risk and imposes costs on China while lowering risk to the United States. Also, the U.S. posture is already strong enough to deter this conflict, right? Savant 21 furthers this, as the U.S. outweighs China in terms of GDP, technology, and military spending in key areas like command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance. The U.S. maintains strategic peace through military bases and defense alliances in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. This shows that the strong American policy in East Asia is actually reducing the risk of war. We've completely turned their entire argument. Additionally, China has a policy of no first use. This means that China is never going to initiate nuclear spending. It's always going to be the U.S. Now, on their impact, right, we can also read mutually assured destruction as another layer of impact defense, because China's never going to actually attack because they know that the U.S. is going to attack them back. Now, onto lethal autonomous weapons. First, non-uniqueness. We've been investing this since the Obama era, and investment's bound to increase, as Heber 22 finds that more than 100 countries already independently pursued this kind of intelligence, and the proliferation of laws is not linked back to U.S. GDP. Additionally, delink this, as laws aren't being developed because of GPC, as Robert 21 reports that most technology used to make laws are being developed by civilians themselves, which makes tech regulation of law literally impossible. So it doesn't matter what our government strategy is, people are still going to independently innovate it, and then turn this entire argument as laws are actually decreasing the likelihood of conflict, as DO17 writes that laws are unlikely to lower the threshold for war and actually increase the cost of aggression, which is then going to be deterring further conflict. On their miscalculation argument. So the primary issue here is that they say software is going to react without human checks because it's like autonomous. But no, like you have to use logic here. Logically, governments are not going to set up weapons to attack automatically without humans to check it. Even though they're autonomous in the fact that like they can detect this. They can detect, oh, this is like this what is it called? Like one country is attacking us, but it doesn't mean that a government is not going to be intelligent enough to also enforce checks on these lethal autonomous weapons. So, additionally, for nuclear extinction, we'll tell you that. Yeah. Wait. Hold on. Alright. So. For nuclear extinction, first, you have to kind of reject these scenarios because every action has some sort of possibility that's going to lead to like nuclear extinction in the first place. And so like, if it's such a low probability, like what? Yeah. And then, yeah. Honestly, that'll be it for rebuttal. Easy sell.
Could I have your cards about how laws are not because of GPC and how people have been investing in them since before GPC? Could I also have your card about how laws are mostly developed by civilians? And could I have your card about how laws increase the cost of aggression? Thank you.
Just give us a second to find all of that.
They're not cut. All right, they're in there. No, the reason I stopped was because like
Okay, cool.
nuclear defense is just going in C1, so I don't want to read it. That's true. It's alright. If we bring it back, I read enough defense anyways. I know, yeah. No, because...
Oh, sorry. I'm going to be starting some prep time. Yeah.
They just stole it's fine. I think they forgot anyways, no. Bro, you should have... Why didn't you paste in the rest of the G as a cautious actor? No, like the full, reasoning. It's alright, it's fine. What, the military simulation? No, I just said that the US outweighs China in terms of... Because... What, the comparative? No, because they're okay, then okay. I'll just ask about it. I'll ask about it. I'll tell them in cross. Edward. Yeah, I shouldn't have read. I stopped reading nuclear extinction because that's literally our. No, just say it. What? This was in 2000, dude. What do you mean?
Okay, I think that's around 1 minute 45 seconds. And just so you know, my name is Anne Saxonov. I am the second speaker for the negative on college prep. And my time will start on my first word. First, I'll be going down their case. Their first contention is defending our allies. They gave the example of Ukraine and Russia. However, supporting Ukraine actually provokes war with Russia. Galen 21 explains, the U.S. and its NATO allies are busily arming Ukraine. That development is exacerbating already dangerous tensions between Kiev and Moscow. Ukraine is being treated as a NATO member in all but name. Such actions are needlessly destabilizing. Washington's arms sales are helping to create a dangerous situation involving Ukraine. Also, Russia is actually close to using nuclear weapons, which could escalate severely, showing that U.S. support is not beneficial. Tankersley and Wong 22 find that senior American officials say that senior Russian military leaders have recently discussed the possibility of using a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Special 22 says that Putin is more likely than not to use nuclear weapons in the war in Ukraine if he faces defeat. Nuclear weapons are the ultimate tools of last resort. U.S. and its allies need to back off. In addition, they talked about proliferation, but they didn't actually give us any pieces of evidence that all of these countries would be able to gain nuclear capability. Their evidence only states that countries would seek to proliferate, not that they have the capability to do so. To win this point, they need to prove both intent and capability for proliferation, which they haven't. Now onto their second contention, a race to the top. On the first subpoint about infrastructure, they talk about China's BRI and its benefits. However, Maya 19 says that flagship BRI investment projects have suffered delays and cancellations. Chinese lending has come under increased scrutiny amid debt servicing and corruption concerns. 8 countries are at particular risk of debt distress based on an identified pipeline of project lending associated with BRI. BRI is only thrusting countries into debt, and if PGI causes it to expand, that would only be a bad thing. And they also they say that competition with China is the reason that Biden is helping to build infrastructure in other countries. However, it isn't only the U.S. participating in PGII. The G7 are all participating in it, showing that it's not solely due to U.S.'s GPC. In addition, PGII is not as good as our opponents make it seem. Global 22 writes, U.S.'s debt is at a critically high level and has hardly any budget to invest in foreign-bound infrastructure. It's very likely that the $200 billion fund cannot be raised to the full number. The U.S. has hardly completed any large infrastructure projects in its own country in the past 10 years, not to mention abroad. Now onto the second subpoint about innovation. GPC doesn't actually help innovation. In fact, sanctions and trade wars halt the economy and halt product and innovation. Our opponents bring out semiconductor cover as an example. The U.S. has recently imposed sanctions on selling semiconductors due to GPC. This has been really bad. As Techno 22 writes, U.S. chip equipment maker Lam Research could lose as much as $2.5 billion in revenue due to new U.S. export restrictions. Kumar 22 says losing access to the China market will cut the revenue of U.S. semiconductor companies. That would lower investment into research and development that could threaten these companies' markets leadership or at worst survival. Sanctions from GPC cause innovation to fall everywhere. Now I'll be addressing their responses to our case. On our first contention, Taiwan. They say that Pelosi is not a representative of the U.S. However, yes, she is. She is a government official and indubitably a representative. Although she may have her own interests as well, her actions are an extension of the United States and as such an extension of their strategy. They also assume in their response that everyone is acting rationally all the time. That's simply not true. Even though it will result in nuclear war, she will still do it. She has issued many statements saying that he believes that Taiwan is a part of China. And we have evidence from the head of the U.S. Navy, which they ignore, saying that China will invade Taiwan by 2024. We can't look at their extrapolations and value them over the head of the United States Navy. Now onto our second contention, laws. They say that human interference will solve. However, laws by their very definition, the definition of a law is a weapon system used to engage and destroy the target without manual human control of the system by their very definition. A fatal flaw is that the AF assumes a rational action in idealized scenarios all the time. They assume that if laws were bad, we wouldn't develop them. Just think about this argument. The point that we wouldn't do it if it would lead to escalation is entirely contradictory to history. Every war has been an undesirable scenario, one where we wish rational action happened, but it was prevented or not used. In the case of laws, we are backed into a corner. If countries pour billions into the law's arm race, other countries feel they must compete. They feel they must produce more weapons, regardless if this is good for the world. It's just what is happening. They say that laws have been developed before, but this doesn't contradict our case at all. GPC worsens the arms race, and they don't refute this. They're also, when we ask for their evidence is just saying that more than 100 countries have already independently pursued this kind of intelligence, but that doesn't actually refute it at all. The number of countries that are doing it actually, like, if there are more countries doing it, that actually just worsens the arm race. Therefore, we strongly urge a negation ballot. Thank you.
Okay, are we good for cross?
Yeah, let me just get my timer out real quick.
Okay.
Okay. Our time can start now.
All right. Could I get the first question?
Yeah, of course.
So okay, yeah. I'll start on like laws, right? So you're saying like GPC is causing laws. Yeah, just explain the entire laws contention.
The entire laws contention?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, I mean, great power competition is leading to proliferation of laws, like increased proliferation of laws. And so as these countries are developing laws, the risk for there are two reasons why laws are uniquely bad. We already went over this. There's first strike. Basically, laws, all of their danger lies in their software. So it's really hard to tell the capabilities of other nations and the extent of their capabilities because it's all in software, which is much more difficult to tell than the number of tanks on a battlefield, for example. So this this uncertainty about their capabilities and about the software leads to fear, and this fear of losing, and that leads to an incentivized first strike. So people are going to strike first because they're uncertain about the other country's capabilities.
Okay.
Also, our second reason, miscalculation. See, lethal autonomous weapons, by definition, since they're autonomous, do not have human checks. You're going to have to make split-second decisions, and it is very likely that they will miscalculate and they will make mistakes, and this is going to lead to nuclear war. And we gave you an empiric about how in the Cold War, we would have had nuclear war, but it was only just last-minute human checks that were able to stop it.
Wait, just really quick on the uniqueness. How exactly is GPC causing laws development?
Well, basically, GPC is basically just adding this pressure as GPC is. As the United States is trying to compete with other countries, they're building up their arsenal of laws, and a bunch of different countries are feeling the pressure to compete with the United States, and they're feeling this, and as there's more pressure to compete with each other, they're all of the different countries are going to want to build up weapons, and this is just going to keep happening exponentially and keep growing exponentially, and as countries, yeah.
Okay, cool. You guys can have a question.
Okay, so you said that laws increases the cost of aggression. However, and so that therefore will deter.
Yeah.
However, how does that work if how does that work with miscalculation? If how does deterrence help to stop miscalculation?
The entire logic for that is essentially saying because laws are this there's military, it's just more capacity to respond, right? So if the capacity to respond exists, then countries are going to be deterred from actually attacking in the first place. That's the logic behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there's miscalculation, so if they aren't meaning to do, okay, that's cross.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna take some prep time. And how much did you use for rebuttal?
I used... Oh, wait. No, it was I used 1:50, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you have about a minute and 10 left.
Okay, so we'll just be adding time onto that. Time will begin now.
They impose sanctions on selling chips, so that's cutting revenue that hurts domestic industries. You have to respond to their turn on Russia close to using nukes in the war. Just say mad. Alright. You good? Cool. That's 40 seconds though.
Okay. That was 40 seconds. The order of my speech is just going to be going on I case, then going to my brother's case. That sounds good. to everyone. If everyone's ready, then let me pull up my stopwatch. Good to go. Okay. Time begins. The cleanest place to vote is on our contention about improving innovation. What we're saying is that great power competition incentivizes nations to innovate. For example, Congress passed $370 billion in green energy technology, along with $52 billion in Chips and Science Act to counteract China. This tech race has been to a global boom for innovation. Empirically, the U.S. is starting large global innovations such as medical imaging and water filtration systems that are still being used today. GPC increases investment in 2020. R&D exceeded $4.1 trillion, which is a global high. This has two impacts. First, Glossaman 21 finds that emerging technologies could lead to such as 5G and AI can improve the lives of billions of consumers. This is the biggest impact in the round, but also on global warming, which could lead to extinction, which outweighs everything on the round on magnitude. They make one sole response so that China is cutting the U.S. on semiconductors. We would say that right now, the U.S. is making their own Chips and Science Act, as we say the same case. They're going to be very independent. Then, on to my opponent's case. First, they talk about the South China Sea scenario. One, we would say that right now, they can see that China is going to invade either way. It has an incentive to invade. So if this is true, then it's a matter of if U.S. responds in a vein of strength or weakness. By increasing our commitments to Taiwan, we de-incentivize China from invading. That's because our evidence states that because of U.S. influence, Xi has become very cautious and his foreign policy is more focused on domestic issues. That's because Rogan finds that without a 100% guarantee that invasion will be completely successful, then Xi won't invade because he doesn't want to imbue the cost of the war against the U.S. Any U.S. intervention is going to be a disincentive for China to invade. They're not going to invade. Then, let's go to my opponent's second contention about laws. They make a lot of concessions. First, on laws, we would say that laws are independent of GPC. That's because before GPC, in the Obama era, we see that laws in lethal autonomous weapons have been increasing, meaning that this is independent. Moreover, our evidence says that this is happening in more than 100 countries. But then on the impact scenario, they say that laws will lead to accidental first strikes. We would say that governments know that because high schoolers know that. Insofar as that is true, governments are not going to naively put these systems in place. They will have human checks. Their impact disproves their link. Now on to the terms that they say against our case. First on Ukraine, they say that Russia is going to escalate to nuclear warfare. We would say that they can consider evidence that right now the situation in Ukraine resembles how Nixon during the Vietnam War, concluding that Russia will go out without nuclear escalation. We would say that that's logical because Russia doesn't want to decimate their own economy and their own nation by nuking the United States. Now onto infrastructure. They say that the G7 is incentivizing. China is part of the G7. U.S. is competing with China to improve infrastructure. Thus, we're proud to refer.
Okay, just to be clear, so you guys are not collapsing. You're just extending all of your contentions.
So basically, we're going for a contention about innovation.
Okay.
But then we responded to the stuff that you said at the end of my speech on C1 and C2.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Hey, Edward. What did you say about the G7 in China?
Okay, we'll be taking some prep time.
Oh.
Starting now.
How does the G7 being included, how is that relevant? Okay, wait. So, you didn't, oh, damn. So, concede China invades regardless. Awesome. You can see that China's incentive to invade is not because of, what is it called? Yeah, China is gonna invade because it's historically not to invade Taiwan. Do you have the China, what is it called? Yeah, that's fine. If we're not going for Ukraine, dude. Alright. Here, I'll do this.
Okay, I think that.
Okay, I am ready to go if everybody else is ready. Perfect. Okay. Oops, wrong doc. Okay, so for a quick off-time roadmap, I'm going to first extend my own case. I'm going to do a little bit of weighing. I'm going to address our own case, and then I am going to address my opponent's case. Okay, first to extend. To summarize, our strategy of GPC leads to proliferation of weapons as seen in the status quo. Furthermore, there's an exponential proliferation of laws due to accessibility, meaning it's also easier to funnel into terrorist organizations. Laws are horrible for two reasons. First is first strike. The difference between laws is in the software, not the firepower. It's harder to estimate the power of software than the number of tanks on the battlefield, and that uncertainty fuels fear and incentivizes first strike in order to not fall behind. Second is miscalculation. Human interference has empirically prevented nuclear conflicts during the Cold War multiple times. With laws, human intervention is no longer possible. In the milliseconds it takes to make decisions, so miscalculations can easily lead to war. These scenarios are unpredictable due to the nature of military conflicts and cannot be solved beforehand. The impact is nuclear war, which would leave the Earth uninhabitable. Because of these impacts, we must stop the creation of laws. Since the U.S. strategy does the opposite, we mean that is a bad strategy, as it allows nuclear war to happen. Now on to some weighing. We outweigh on magnitude. First, nuclear war devastates everybody. We cannot be around to solve humanity's problems, for example, like infrastructure. Granted that those arguments are true, which we don't think they are. If nuclear war devastates everybody and wipes out humanity and leaves the Earth uninhabitable, we outweigh on probability, as well as laws are being developed right now at extremely high rates. That is going to inevitably lead to proliferation. Onto our case, our opponents have failed to refute our case. In summary, and in their rebuttals, they continuously say that why would they do it if it's bad for humanity? But this is a principle of self-defense. Let's say someone threatens to hurt you. You'll be inclined to defend yourself. In order to defend yourself, you must have a weapon that is on par with the weapon of your opponent. Thus, the law's arm race occurs. They also say that laws are independent of GPC. If nations need to compete in an arms race to produce laws, this leads to mass weapon production. GPC is the motivator of law production because it increases competition to produce these weapons. These are obviously highly dangerous because of miscalculation of weapons, which they don't respond to, and incentivize first strike, which they also dropped, leading to nuclear war. Onto their subpoint about innovation, which they collapsed on. GPC doesn't actually help innovation. In fact, sanctions and trade wars halt the economy, according to our evidence, and halt production and innovation. We bring up semiconductors as an example of this. They completely misunderstand our rebuttal. We are saying that the sanctions meant that semiconductor companies in the United States lost revenue and would be unable to innovate. They do not respond to this effectively, and therefore you can disregard their entire contention. Onto infrastructure, they completely ignore our turn that if PGII causes BRI to expand, that would actually be bad, as it thrusts countries into debt. We provide empirical evidence for this. So that is another independent reason to vote for us. They also do not respond to the fact that PGII will not be effective and will not reach funding according to the aforementioned evidence. They also state on Russia and Ukraine, we already proved that GPC caused Russia to invade Ukraine, and they don't dispute this. Therefore, you ought to give a negative ballot.
Alright. Bigfoot Cross.
You can have the first question.
Okay. Time begins now. Let's talk about what you just said about Africa. You say that PGII doesn't have the investment, but that also you say that PGII has left the debt. So which one is true?
Oh, sorry, we weren't talking about Africa. We were saying BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative in China.
So if the current existing infrastructure project leads to debt, shouldn't that mean that we should give Africans an alternative?
No, but you said yourself that PGII, if it were to work, would cause China to want to compete and expand their BRI. And
we're saying that right now, U.S. competition gives a new alternative to these African nations so that they don't have to be reliant on China and then thus go into debt.
No, but you read something in your case about how PGII would cause China to expand their BRI.
In case, we say that the reason why PGII is enacted is in competition against the BRI, not that the BRI will expand because of PGII competition. But you can have a question.
I'm going to take one. I mean, you can have another question. We don't
Sure,
have much
I
time.
can take another one. So let's talk about laws, lethal autonomous weapons. So these exist right now, right? So which country has like laws implemented in like their nuclear like facilities?
They don't.
Okay.
They
So
are not
why
currently
not?
utilized in battle.
So why not? Why not? If
Because they're being produced right now. They're in the making. That's
all
the threat
evidence
of them.
says that laws have been produced for like almost 6 years as of right
They
now.
haven't been
So-
used.
okay,
If
so
a
why-
law has been
why
used,
hasn't
then it
laws
is
been used?
not a law.
If they exist, why have they not been used?
If they're being produced right now is the point.
No, but they exist
People are
already.
pouring, countries are pouring billions
So when
into
are
their
laws
production.
when are laws actually going to be used?
Sorry?
When are laws going to be used?
In the near future.
Okay, we've been developing them for 6 years, right? Like, can you give me like a broad timeline as to like when, like this decade, next decade? When are the impacts actually going to happen?
I can't give you an exact year when it's going to happen. That would just be dishonest of me to make something up.
Okay, you can have a
But I mean, we can infer from our empirics that it's going to happen soon, based on the very especially in recent years, countries have poured more and more and more money into it. And if more money is being put into their production, it's more likely that they're going to actually use
Okay,
it.
you can have a question.
Got it?
So you said that China is part of the G7, therefore
Yeah.
EGII was
So-
because of the US's GPC. I didn't understand
Yeah,
how
you're
that.
saying that the U.S., like, the G7 forced the U.S. to compete, but we would say that the Global 7, like, China is part of the Global 7, right? So your evidence directly says that the U.S. is competing with China, right? And insofar as China is the only, actor in the region, we would say that that's pretty indicative of competition, but that's time.
You weren't actually answering their point, though. Okay.
We'll take the last remaining 30 seconds of prep that we have, if that checks out with the judgment moments. Okay. Just to clarify, we took 1 minute 40 seconds. 1 minute 50 seconds, and then we took 40 seconds, so that gives us 30 seconds left. We'll take that right now. Time begins now.
Okay, so they say, okay, what the fuck do I say to like the BRA? No, climate change outweighs CC. Like because they extended the term that BRI caused like debt distress, so I'll just extend, and then extend probability. We're dropping everything on Taiwan, right? Okay. Awesome. All right. So. Cool. Okay. All right. So. If everybody's all right, I'll just be going down. I'll start first on our case and then Wei and then first our case or their case and then Wei. All right. In that case, time will start now. Judge, there's one question that's going to guide your vote in this round. Is there benefit to voting neg that justifies stopping competitive innovation? The answer is no, because GPC has caused over $400 billion of U.S. innovation into green tech development. Additionally, China has mirrored this by doubling research in green tech because of this U.S. investment. And now in 2020, spending on research and development exceeded $4.1 trillion, which is a record 2.5% of global GDP. This has two impacts. First is that this emerging technology has such as 5G and AI has the potential to improve the lives of billions of consumers. And secondly, green tech development is our uniqueness, and reducing climate change is the uniqueness right now, as U.S. greenhouse gas emissions have decreased 20% since 2005. It shows that this green tech development is actually working to stop climate change. They give one response saying that the sanctions between the U.S. and China show that we're losing revenue. This doesn't matter if we're still overall going to be investing more into green tech development. Additionally, this is only fostering more growth of the U.S. domestically, of these U.S. Domestic companies. Now, onto their case. they say they're extending their laws argument. The main issue with their laws argument is that they're conceding that laws exist right now, but nobody's actually used them. So if their entire case is about how this increased, like about how like the proliferation of laws is going to cause more countries to use them. If laws have already been proliferated, then why exactly have we seen no law usage whatsoever? They are unable to respond to this, and so we're outweighing. First, on probability, because you know that climate change is inevitable and it's going to cause human extinction if it's not addressed. Second, on magnitude, because their argument about debt distress caused by the BRI is outweighed by imminent climate change extinction. Additionally, on laws, we're just several times more probable. Climate change is inevitable. Better? I think that was better, right? No, but dude, all of their defense is I linked it, our defense is literally that laws already exist. That's our defense.
Okay. So
Fuck.
If everybody's ready, I will start my final focus speech. Okay. My time will start on my first word. To summarize, our strategy of GPC leads to proliferation of powers as seen in the status quo. Furthermore, there's an exponential proliferation of laws due to accessibility, meaning it's also easier to funnel into terrorist organizations. Laws are horrible for two reasons. One is first strike. The difference between laws is in the software, not firepower. It's harder to estimate the power of software than the number of tanks on the battlefield, and that uncertainty fuels fear and incentivizes first strike in order not to fall behind. And there's also miscalculation. Human interference has empirically prevented nuclear conflicts during the Cold War multiple times. With laws, human intervention is no longer possible in the milliseconds it takes to make decisions, so miscalculation can easily lead to nuclear war. These scenarios are unpredictable due to the nature of military conflict and cannot be solved beforehand. The impact is nuclear war, which will leave the Earth uninhabitable. Because of these impacts, we must stop the creation of laws. Since the U.S. strategy does the opposite, that means it's a bad strategy as it allows nuclear war to happen. Moving on weighing. We outweigh on magnitude. Nuclear weapon devastates everyone, leaving the Earth uninhabitable, and it also destroys the climate with radiation. And we also outweigh on time frame. The recent outpour of funding into laws is causing proliferation and weapons development right now in the present. Now onto their case. Our opponents have failed to refute our case, and they've said that we, in response to laws, they're saying that laws are not being used right now. However, they haven't been used on the battlefield. Their evidence, I've read it, it does not refer to laws being used in battle, just production. We are also being backed into a corner by GPC. The point of competition is that it drives states to produce weapons. This causes other nations to produce similar weapons as a means of defense. Our point still stands very strong. This is highly dangerous, miscalculation of weapons and incentivized first strike. They drop both of these links. Now onto the subpoint about innovation. GPC doesn't actually help innovation. In fact, sanctions and trade wars halt the economy and halt production and innovation. Bringing up semiconductors as an example, they completely misunderstand it and say that somehow these sanctions will improve domestic growth and competition. However, that's simply not true. If these companies are not don't have enough money to survive and don't have enough money to innovate, then how are they going to increase innovation? That just makes no sense. Innovation can't exist without revenue. And these sanctions are completely destroying revenue since China is such a humongous market. Therefore, we strongly urge a negative ballot. Thank you.
Good round, and thank you for judging.
Good round.
Good round. Thank you so much for judging. Yeah.
You're welcome. Good round, everyone. Give me 1 second here.
I think their weighing was really weak. I think it's good that I got in the weighing.
Okay. I ended up voting for the neg side. It
Never
came
mind.
down to your first contention and Taiwan and the issue with
what?
Pelosi that I just didn't feel was
What?
effectively refuted by your opponents.
All right, it's fine. All right, thank you so much for thank you so much for
Hope you guys have a
judging.
good rest of your tournament.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What the fuck? Yeah. All right. Okay. We literally recorded a round, bro.